Discussion on verses 1 to 6 of 6. During his life in Mecca, the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was once circumambulating the house of Allah, the Exalted, the Kaaba, during an act of worship. At that time, some of the non-believing leaders of Mecca attempted to interrupt him with a proposal based on compromise. They suggested that if he were willing to worship their idols in some form, they would also worship Allah, the Exalted, thereby creating an outward appearance of mutual agreement and social harmony while maintaining their differing beliefs. After this, Allah, the Exalted, revealed chapter 109 Al-Kafirun, verses 1 to 6.
Say, O disbelievers, I do not worship what you worship, nor are you worshippers of what I worship, nor will I be a worshipper of what you worship, nor will you be worshippers of what I worship. For you is your way of life, and for me is my way of life.
This incident is recorded in Imam Ibn Kathir's The Life of the Prophet, Volume 2, pages 35 to 36. This chapter establishes a clear distinction in matters of faith and worship, making it clear that principles of belief cannot be blended or compromised for the sake of social agreement or convenience. At the same time, Islamic teachings do not promote unnecessary rigidity in worldly matters that do not conflict with divine guidance. Instead, a balanced approach is encouraged in daily dealings, where cooperation, fairness, and good character are maintained. However, when a matter directly contradicts the commands of Allah, the Exalted, a person is required to remain firm, as compromise in core beliefs leads to a weakening of obedience and can ultimately result in misuse of the blessings granted to them. When a person begins to compromise in matters of faith for the sake of acceptance or harmony with opposing values, it can gradually affect their inner stability. Over time, priorities become unclear, responsibilities may be neglected, and the proper place of people and values in one's life may become distorted. This internal imbalance can contribute to emotional strain and confusion, as the foundation of decision-making shifts away from accountability before Allah, the Exalted, and toward the pursuit of approval or convenience. Even if some worldly comfort is achieved, it may not bring lasting peace, as true tranquility is closely tied to consistency between belief and action. Chapter 109 Al-Kafirun, verses 1 to 5.
Say, O disbelievers, I do not worship what you worship, nor are you worshippers of what I worship, nor will I be a worshipper of what you worship, nor will you be worshippers of what I worship.
It is essential to recognize that forms of worship, in the Islamic sense, are not limited to the physical act of bowing or prostrating to idols. Rather, anything that is obeyed in a manner that leads to disobedience of Allah, the Exalted, can take on the meaning of being treated as something worshipped in practice. This includes influences such as social pressures, cultural trends, online platforms, fashion industries, or even individual personalities when their expectations override divine guidance. Chapter 9 at Tawbah, verse 31.
They have taken their scholars and monks as lords besides Allah.
This verse explains that certain groups did not literally worship their religious leaders in a ritual sense, but instead gave them obedience in matters where such obedience contradicted the commands of Allah, the Exalted. In this way, authority was effectively elevated above divine guidance in practical behavior. The lesson drawn from this is that worship is closely linked to obedience, and misplaced obedience can become a form of misdirected devotion. A similar principle is expressed in relation to the devil. Chapter 36 Yasin, verse 60.
Did I not enjoin upon you, O children of Adam, that you not worship Satan, for indeed he is to you a clear enemy?
Although most people do not consciously direct acts of worship toward the devil, the verse highlights that following his influence in ways that lead to disobedience is considered a form of worship in outcome and effect. This demonstrates that worship is defined not only by intention in name, but also by patterns of obedience and alignment. From this understanding, it follows that when a person repeatedly prioritizes influences that contradict the commands of Allah, the Exalted, they gradually become subject to competing pressures. These pressures may come from social approval systems, workplace expectations, entertainment culture, or digital environments that shape behavior and priorities. When a person attempts to satisfy all of these influences simultaneously, especially when they conflict with one another, it can lead to internal strain and instability, as the standards being followed are not unified or consistent. In such a condition, a person may feel as though they are serving multiple masters, each demanding different forms of behavior and identity. Because these expectations are often unstable and constantly changing, it becomes difficult to achieve lasting satisfaction or inner peace. This can result in emotional fatigue, confusion in decision-making, and a sense of dissatisfaction, even when external success or recognition is present. The underlying issue is not simply external pressure, but the absence of a stable, singular foundation for guiding behavior. By contrast, when a person directs their obedience primarily to Allah, the Exalted, their actions become structured around a consistent moral framework. This allows blessings such as time, wealth, relationships, and personal abilities to be used in a balanced and purposeful way. Instead of being pulled in conflicting directions, priorities become clearer, and life becomes more organized in both thought and practice. This alignment contributes to greater emotional stability and a clearer sense of purpose. Ultimately, turning away from obedience to Allah, the Exalted, and instead submitting to competing worldly influences in matters of disobedience, does not lead to lasting benefit or stability. Such influences cannot provide protection or assistance in the final accountability before Allah, the Exalted. Therefore, true well-being is found in consistent obedience to Allah, the Exalted, and in using all blessings in accordance with divine guidance, which leads to balance in both personal life and wider conduct. Chapter 109 Al-Kafirun, verses 1 to 5.
Say, O disbelievers, I do not worship what you worship, nor are you worshippers of what I worship, nor will I be a worshipper of what you worship, nor will you be worshippers of what I worship.
In addition, it is vital to understand that worshipping Allah, the Exalted, is not limited to ritual acts such as prayer alone, but extends to a comprehensive way of life that includes obedience in all circumstances and responsible use of every blessing granted. This obedience is not merely internal belief, but active compliance with divine guidance in practical behavior. Actions are intended to reflect sincerity, and they are not accepted when performed purely for hidden motives disconnected from the pleasure of Allah, the Exalted. This principle is supported in a hadith found in Jami at Tirmidhi, number 3154, which emphasizes sincerity in action and intention. Obedience to Allah, the Exalted, also involves engagement with the Holy Quran in a complete and meaningful way. This includes consistent recitation, seeking correct understanding through reliable learning, and applying its teachings in daily life with the intention of pleasing Allah, the Exalted. In this sense, engagement with the Holy Quran is not passive, but active and transformative. A person who selects only certain teachings based on personal preference risks losing the deeper benefit of guidance, as true adherence involves accepting both ease and challenge within divine instruction. Chapter 17 Al-Isra, verse 82.
And we send down of the Quran that which is healing and mercy for the believers, but it does not increase the wrongdoers except in loss.
Ultimately, the Holy Quran is not meant to be treated only as a solution for immediate worldly problems, while its broader guidance is neglected. Its primary purpose is to guide a person towards success in the hereafter by shaping belief, character, and conduct in accordance with divine instruction. Reducing it to a tool used only in times of difficulty, while ignoring its comprehensive guidance in everyday life, weakens its transformative purpose. In this sense, it is like possessing a complete system of guidance but only using it when convenient, rather than relying on it as a continuous framework for life. Therefore, true commitment to the Holy Quran involves consistent engagement, sincere understanding, and practical application in all aspects of life. Through this, a person maintains alignment between belief and action, remains firm in accountability before Allah the Exalted, and achieves greater stability, clarity, and peace in both worldly life and the life to come. When a person truly obeys Allah, the Exalted, in the manner described earlier, by aligning belief, intention, and action, a clear distinction becomes evident between the conduct of someone who sincerely holds faith and the conduct of someone who does not believe. Chapter 109 Al-Kafirun, verse 6.
For you is your way of life, and for me is my way of life.
This verse establishes a fundamental separation in principles, where each path is defined by its underlying worldview and resulting behavior. It highlights that belief is not merely a verbal claim, but a lived reality that shapes decisions, priorities, and actions. In this sense, the way of life of a person is reflected in how they use their time, resources, and blessings, and whether these are directed in accordance with obedience to Allah, the Exalted. When a person declares faith but fails to support that declaration through consistent action, a contradiction can emerge between belief and behavior. Over time, this inconsistency may lead them to gradually adopt patterns of conduct similar to those who do not base their lives on accountability before Allah, the Exalted. This can result in the misuse of blessings such as wealth, health, influence, and opportunity, where these are no longer guided by moral responsibility but by shifting personal desires or external pressures. As a consequence, this imbalance may affect both internal state and outward conduct. Such imbalance often contributes to psychological and practical instability. When priorities are not clearly defined by a stable moral framework, a person may struggle to properly organize responsibilities, relationships, and personal goals. This can lead to emotional strain, confusion in decision-making, and a sense of dissatisfaction, even when material comfort is present. The issue arises not simply from external circumstances, but from a lack of alignment between belief and lived practice. If this condition continues, it can also result in neglect of preparation for accountability on the Day of Judgment. When actions are consistently disconnected from belief, a person may become increasingly absorbed in immediate concerns while overlooking long-term spiritual consequences. In such a state, the imbalance affects not only worldly life but also the outcome in the hereafter, as accountability is ultimately based on sincerity and actions together, not mere claims. It is also important to understand the distinction between outward legal classification in this world and ultimate judgment in the hereafter. In this worldly life, a person may be considered a person of faith based on their verbal declaration and external identification. However, final judgment before Allah, the Exalted, is based on inner reality, intention, and the truth of one's actions, which are fully known only to Him. This means that outward recognition does not necessarily reflect inner certainty or sincerity, as the true state of a person is hidden from others. Because of this, there is also a serious spiritual risk for a person who consistently neglects to align their declaration of faith with action. Faith, in this understanding, requires continuous nurturing through obedience, reflection, and righteous conduct. When this is neglected, a person may gradually lose sensitivity to moral guidance and become distant from sincere obedience. In this sense, faith can be weakened over time if it is not supported by consistent practice and awareness. This condition is often compared to a flame that requires ongoing fuel and protection to remain lit. If it is neglected, it can diminish and eventually disappear. Similarly, faith requires continuous engagement through obedience and moral discipline in order to remain strong and stable. Neglecting these responsibilities places a person at risk of spiritual loss, which is regarded as the most severe form of loss because it affects both present purpose and ultimate outcome. Therefore, a person is encouraged to wholeheartedly accept and consistently implement the teachings of Islam for their own benefit, even when this requires setting aside personal desires or immediate inclinations. Their attitude should resemble that of a rational and trusting patient who relies fully on the judgment of a skilled physician. Such a patient recognizes that a prescribed treatment may be uncomfortable, demanding, or restrictive, yet still accepts it because it is understood to bring healing and long-term well-being. In the same way, divine guidance may sometimes conflict with habit or personal preference, but it is ultimately directed towards a person's true welfare. Just as a disciplined patient restores physical health and achieves mental stability by following medical instruction, a person who follows divine guidance attains clarity of thought, emotional balance, and inner tranquility. This is because only Allah, the Exalted, possesses perfect and complete knowledge of human nature and what is required for a person to live a balanced and meaningful existence. With this perfect knowledge, every blessing, responsibility, and relationship is placed in its proper position, preventing imbalance, excess, and neglect. Human knowledge, regardless of its advancement, remains inherently limited. Even with extensive progress in fields such as psychology, biology, and human behavior, human beings are still unable to fully resolve every difficulty or remove all forms of emotional distress, instability, or hardship. Human judgment is consistently shaped by limited experience, incomplete understanding, and personal bias. For this reason, human systems may offer partial benefit, but they cannot provide complete guidance for every situation or guarantee lasting inner harmony. In contrast, Allah, the Exalted, possesses absolute and unrestricted knowledge, and has already conveyed through the Holy Quran and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, everything necessary for a person to live a purposeful and balanced life. The difference between those who follow divine guidance and those who turn away from it is often reflected in their conduct and in the outcomes of their choices. Those who align their lives with Islamic teachings tend to exhibit greater emotional stability, clearer judgment, and a more organized approach to life, even during times of difficulty. In contrast, those who disregard these principles frequently experience confusion, inner conflict, and a lack of direction, even when they appear to enjoy outward comfort or success. This contrast shows that true order is not merely external, but is deeply rooted in how a person aligns their life with divine instruction. Although a patient may not fully understand the reasoning behind a medical prescription, they still trust the expertise of the physician. However, Allah, the Exalted, does not require blind acceptance without reflection. Rather, He encourages people to think, reason, and observe the signs within themselves and throughout the world around them. Faith is therefore grounded in understanding and sincerity, not unexamined imitation. Chapter 12 Yusuf, verse 108.
Say, this is my way, I invite to Allah with insight, I and those who follow me.
Furthermore, it is Allah the Exalted alone who has complete authority over a person's inner state, including their emotions and sense of peace and tranquility. Chapter 53 and Najm, verse 43.
And that it is He who makes one laugh and weep.
This reality demonstrates that enduring inner peace cannot be achieved through external conditions alone, but is ultimately granted by Allah, the Exalted. It is closely connected to how a person makes use of the blessings entrusted to them, and whether those blessings are directed in accordance with divine guidance. Those who live in accordance with this guidance tend to experience greater stability, purpose, and emotional balance, whereas those who neglect or misuse these blessings often fall into confusion, inner turmoil, and dissatisfaction. In conclusion, genuine peace, whether of mind, body, or spirit, can only be attained through sincere alignment with the guidance of Allah, the Exalted. This involves recognizing that divine guidance is not a restriction on life, but a framework through which life is structured, given meaning, and brought into harmony in both this world and the life to come. Chapter 16 and Nahl, verse 97.
Whoever does righteousness, whether male or female, while he is a believer, we will surely cause him to live a good life, and we will surely give them their reward in the hereafter according to the best of what they used to do.
All praise is due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, and may peace and blessings be upon His final messenger, Muhammad, his noble family and companions.